welcome to the Horror Highway podcast. Today I'll be your host Omar, and with me is
Aris.
and today's gonna be kind of different with the way I present this. Kind of wrote a script. I'm just gonna start off reading it. On August 8, 1973, Elmer Henley would call the police claiming to have shot a disgusting monster in self-defense.
You?
Henley,
You shot it?
what? Elmer Henley?
Oh, I thought you said Omar Henley. I'm like, huh?
Does it sound like okay, whatever?
Yeah.
Uh,
So Elmer Henley.
Elmer Henley, yes. Henley would have shot Dean Corll with a .22 pistol 6 times, all in his shoulder and his back. Actually, one was in his head. This call would lead the Houston police down one of the worst cases of a serial killer in the area, and the strangest thing about this call is Henley claiming he had killed his friend. So the man he shot, Dean Corll, is known as the Candyman killer. And have you ever heard of him?
No. I've heard of Candyman from like the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's the only Candyman killer, because on the Wikipedia, that also named him the Pied Piper. He had two nicknames.
So this is a true crime serial killer?
Yeah, this is true crime serial killer. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like, don't want to mess this up or anything, be disrespectful.
Okay.
Actually, really quickly, one of the main reasons most people haven't heard of this guy, despite his high kill count and his very, like, what he did to the bodies was disgusting, is because like the guy from San Francisco who was killing people and like didn't stop the world from ending, like he was so deluded he did that. I forget his name. He started killing right before like John Wayne Gacy, the other guys with the big three. You know who I'm talking about? Is John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and
No.
I think
it's only
there's another one, but like he killed right before those big three, and those overshadowed him.
okay.
Dean Corll was a monster, the Candyman killer, but finding out if this was a nurture or nature thing is actually quite hard to figure out. Born on December 24th, 1939, Dean Corll was the firstborn child of Mary Robinson and Arnold Edwin Corll. By all accounts, his early life seems to have not been easy, as he would have been in an abusive household with an extremely strict father and an overdoting mother. In 1942, his parents' unstable and toxic relationship would lead them to officially divorce. Dean was only 4. Dean would have a younger brother, and the children... Dean would have a younger brother. And because he had the younger brother and him, eventually made the parents get back together because they didn't want they didn't want them to have a bad life.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest issue was like the dad wasn't really ever there when they got back together because he had been drafted into the Air Force. This, however, was short-lived, as the mother would divorce her father once again and keep custody of Dean and his brother. It was when the parents got back together in the 1950s that the family would move to Pasadena, Houston, Dean's future home and hunting ground. The following time in his life, his mother would remarry a traveling salesman named Jake West. Dean's family would move to Vidor, Texas, where his mother would have a daughter, Dean's stepsister, and the family candy business would begin. During this time, his school life had remained the same throughout his entire life. It was unassuming. Dean was the quiet kid who kept his head down and did well enough to never stand out, but he was like a solid ABA honor roll type kid.
Yeah, just normal dude.
And as far as like teachers and other people recall him, like they couldn't tell anything was off about him. And they were just like, he was just a good kid who did his work and all that shit.
Yes.
In 1958, after Dean's graduation, the family moved back to Houston, where they opened up Pecan Prime Candy Shop. But for Dean, this wouldn't last long. In 1960, Dean moved to Indiana with his grandparents. It seems Dean wasn't good with forming bonds, since only staying in Indiana for 2 years, he only made like one good. He only had like one solid relationship, and it was with some girl. At least that's the rumor. The rumor was that like he had a pretty solid relationship with a girl, but just 2 years he would then move back to Houston with the family business, and he would actually move in an apartment that was above the candy business. Now this is where Dean starts to show a bit of his true self. Following the divorce of Jake West and Dean's mother in 1963, Corll would become the vice president of the candy company, and he would quickly abuse that power. A teenage employee of the company would accuse Corll of making sexual remarks and advances towards him. At the time, Dean would have been 24. Thankfully, this would not last long, as in 1964, Corll would be drafted in the U.S. Army. Dean hated his time in the military and very much wanted to go back to Houston to, quote, help the family business. It's thought that this time in the Army, constantly surrounded by men, is what awakened him to his homosexual nature. Now,
there it is again, bro.
yeah, yeah, and I'm actually kind of, I don't know, I kind of find this one hard to, the homosexual thing hard to believe, because the teenager he was hitting on was a male teenager at his work. So, I don't know if that's just kind of the belief, because you know, we know you're born gay, you don't turn gay, but at the same time you kind of have to realize you're gay. So, I mean, it's just my thoughts on it. Also, like I was saying, it seems that like after middle school, kind of like like he moved like places 3 times when he was a young kid, and then after high school he moved to Indiana. He moved back. He couldn't seem to really find a solid footing in any place, and I think this is what. I think this was a big issue with him, because obviously he couldn't form bonds from the sounds of it. That's why most people in the school would just say he's the quiet, unassuming kid, because that's what people say when they don't know you. Because obviously once you get to know someone, you don't say they're quiet. Like, even if they're quiet, you're like, he was quiet, yeah, but, you know, I got to know him and everything. So,
Yes.
my belief on this is he was either kind of having to hide himself, so he was like purposefully keeping his distance, because what he does, because I haven't gone into what he does, but it's Ayler levels of bad. It was Iller, right?
Yeah.
It's
Larry Ayler?
Larry Ayler. It's like that bad.
I forgot his name, bro. Hold on, let me make sure. Yeah, Larry Ayler.
Like,
Last episode.
Alright. So this okay. After 10 months of service, in July 11th, 1965, Corll would go back to Houston. Now, his disgusting, inhumane depravity would shortly follow after his return. Also, I would like to say that he never was in war or anything. Well, he was in the military. He was in boot camp for however long. I think it's a month or 3 months or something. I don't remember. But he was a fucking radio repairman.
Okay.
So, like, during the Vietnam War, he was bitching about a fucking... I don't know if this was the Vietnam War or the Korean War, but it was like the Cold War time, right? He was drafted, and this motherfucker's complaining about fucking being a radio repairman. He actually got honorably discharged, which... I mean, what the fuck? From 1965 to 1968, the candy company Pecan Prime was renamed to Corll Candy, but the venture did not last long. At that time, kids would hang behind the store, seeing as it had moved a street away from a local school, from like where it was originally at. This is in Houston, by the way, because he got back from the military.
Oh, this right here?
Yeah, my bad. Like, this is after he was honorably discharged. He's back, and like for 3 years going on, from 1965 to 1968. Because I felt like I went over that pretty quick, so I'm just reiterating it. There, Dean would give kids free candy. Here, he got his nickname, the Candyman. He would also go by the nickname, the Pied Piper. It was between all of this in 1967 when Corll would meet one of his first victims, David Brooks, a 12-year-old who Corll would befriend. This was the beginning of a truly disgusting and twisted abusive relationship between the two. David Brooks came from a broken home. His parents divorced, and him not taking school seriously led to him dropping out of high school in 1970, where his father lived. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I misread that. So his mother didn't live in Houston, but David Brooks' father did live in Houston, which was where Dean Corll was at the time.
At the time.
Yeah. Where was I? When he was in Houston, Corll would end up offering money in exchange for sexual relations with the 15-year-old in 1970, like after the year he dropped out. And since the Corll Candy Company had ended in 1968, Corll had actually had to acquire a new job, which was he became an electrician, and he moved to Pasadena, which is a city like not really that far from Houston, when the company had closed. Sorry. From 1970 to 1973 is the time when Corll was active as a killer. In total, Corll would have a confirmed 28 victims, which in 1973 had been the highest body count there was. He would target males from the age range of 13 to 20. Corll would also pick up another boy by the name of Elmer Wayne Henley. In 1971, these two boys, which was Brooks and Henley, would become the main accomplices for Corll, as both of the boys would often coerce other boys with the promise of alcohol, drugs, inhalants, and a party in order to bring them to Corll for him to do his misdeeds. Oh, sorry. Now, before I go further, Elmer Wayne Henley, which was the guy who shot him, he and Brooks, like I said earlier, they both came from like broken, quote unquote, broken homes. So, from my research on this, there seemed to have been like in Houston at the time, there was a lot of runaways, and basically like kids were just going out and doing whatever the fuck they want, which let like a predator like him, obviously like manipulate them to like make him think like, oh yeah, me propositioning you for sexual favors is totally normal. Oh yeah, you could sleep over. I don't know your parents and I'm a total stranger, but like, come live in my apartment.
I don't know, man. Like, that's just I guess this is a time before stranger danger,
The following years, which like 1970 then the 1980, that's what led to stranger danger because of men like this guy and John Wayne Gacy and all of them. Yeah. I just remember John Wayne Gacy because he has a like his name is, it rolls off the tongue. That's really it.
I mean, like even like if they did fucking get stranger danger popular or whatever, I just feel like they shouldn't need to.
Well,
hold on. Never mind. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think stranger danger would have been effective at the time because that was like the free love and hippie movement, which was around that age, and so there was just a lot of kids and high schoolers that were just kind of like leaving their homes and shit and just doing whatever they want, joining communes. Like this is, like Woodstock and all that. Like the people were just getting high and shit. So even if the schools implemented this, you're right, it wouldn't have been popular. People would have been more willing to have like believe that there was more good people out there than there are bad.
I mean,
okay.
Even then, I feel like, I guess, I don't want to be an asshole, but I'm gonna be an asshole. I just feel like parents back then were terrible parents.
Oh my God, were they awful? I mean, like we know now, like beating your kid should be the severest fucking punishment there is, right? But I mean, back then they beat them for fucking anything. Like, you talk back to me, I beat you. Fucking, you get a B, I beat you. That was their go-to punishment back then, dude.
I mean,
And
like,
like,
yeah, I guess they
honest,
didn't care where anyone, like, I guess their kids went and stuff.
no, they. So I think the big issue is, like I said, at this time he had been drafted in like 1968 and everything. So there was a big, like, the Cold War really put a lot of fear in a lot of people. So you're right, they didn't care. For a lot of them, they truly did believe that the world might end, like any time and shit like that.
Yeah.
Uh, Corll was manipulating his people. Like the Vietnam War and all that was in full swing. So, like the way the police were treating, um, this whole thing was like they weren't really paying attention to like a lot of the crimes being committed, or
Yeah.
like runaways, if you get what I'm saying. So that's what allowed Dean that's what allowed Brooke and Henley to be accomplices with him within 1970 and 1973. um uh, and that's why they were able to like just walk up to kids and be like, hey, you want to do drugs, smoke weed, and go fucking get high off paint thinner or whatever they said, to parties and shit, and not be worried about being stopped by the police or anything. um Actually, Dean Corll's first two murders were actually all done solely by him. It wasn't until the second murder that he got interrupted by Brooks that ABD would bring him into the fold. And I want to know that despite the kids being victims of Corll, you are most certainly not innocent of helping him. They had multiple times to get away and warned the police, but decided to keep helping him. And with the killings and everything. Corll's first assumed kill was 18-year-old college freshman named Jeffrey Cohen. On September 25th, 1970, he picked him up as he was hitchhiking from his university to his parents' home. His first kill was not experimental as most killers. From the bat, Corll was a monster, abusing Cohen physically and sexually. He would die via strangulation. This would be Corll's main method of killing for the remaining 3 years of his life, only getting more graphic with how he violated his victims in a way that I do not want to get in depth to describe. It was it was genuinely like, it would be upsetting to hear. You get me?
Yeah, it would.
Just I guess if I were to go into depth with it without being like offensive to the victims, is it there is to note that he sexually abused them uh, with like such degeneracy. Like there's it it was really disgusting. Like these people, obviously they're not gonna be treated like humans when a killer has them, but like this shit was on another level. And he actually had a like board of wood that had like had string, like rope, not like screwed into it, where he would like fasten the rope around their arms to like pin them down, so he would torture them and shit like that. And not all his victims would die via strangulation. He did have the .22 that would ultimately end his life. He sometimes also killed them via gunshot. But it is to know.
So how many kills did he have?
28 confirmed.
28 confirmed. Okay.
It is believed that he had more kills. Um, from what I read, it really does feel like there was more than 28 victims. Because from what I read, it seemed that the Houston police, as soon as all the bodies that Henley and Brooks would eventually confess to, as soon as they said these were all the bodies, because at that point it was such a fucking high kill count, um, that the police just wanted to end it. Because obviously, if you add more bodies to it, the city's gonna look that much more fucking worse.
Yeah, it's facts.
Um, okay, I will now go into the list of victims. In 1970, there was 2 victims. On September 25th, he killed Jeffrey Cohen, the 18-year-old, as college student. And then on December 15th, he got both Danny Yates and James Glass, both 14-year-olds. He would take them at the same exact time. I don't know if they were both killed at the same time, but they know that they were both victims at the same time. And then
both of these people?
Yeah. They were both held by him at the same time. 1971, which is when Henley gets this is when he picks up Henley. So at this point, Brooks would have already interrupted him and is now already part of the killing. And in this year is the year he picks up Henley. January 30th, he killed Donald Waldrop, a 15-year-old, and Jerry Waldrop, a 13-year-old. March 9th, Randall Harvey is a 15-year-old. May 29th, David Hilgest and Gregory Malley, 16, and David Hilgest was 13. August 17th, Reuben Watson, a 17-year-old, was killed. Then we move into 1972. On February 9th, he killed Willard Rusty Branch Jr., a 17-year-old. March 24th, Frank Aguirre, an 18-year-old. March 20th, Mark Scott, a 17-year-old. May 21, John DeLone, a 16-year-old, and Billy Balch, a 17-year-old. July 20th, Stephen Sickman, a 17-year-old. October 3rd, Wally J. Samo, a 14-year-old, and Richard Hembry, a 13-year-old. November 12th, Richard Kempner, a 19-year-old. And we move into his final year of victims. In 1973, he took the life of Joseph Lyles, a 17-year-old, on February 1st. On June 4th, he killed Billy Ray Lawrence, a 15-year-old. On June 15th, he killed Ray Blackburn, a 20-year-old. July 7th, Homer Garcia, a 15-year-old. July 12th, John Sellers, a 17-year-old. July 19th, Michael Tony Balch, a 15-year-old. And he was actually he was the brother of Billy Balch, who died. Give me a sec. Let's see if I can remember. Oh yeah, so that's the guy that died in May 21st, 1972. On July 25th, he killed Marty Jones, an 18-year-old, and Charles Carey Cobble. And August 3rd, James Drymala, a 13-year-old, would be his last victim. In this specific area, which was the Houston Heights, he would get away with these 28 murders because the Houston Heights was a, like, quote-unquote bad area. This is where all the police didn't care about the kids that lived there, or the people that lived there in general. It was like low income and like decent crime rate and all that.
Yes.
Now to return where I started, as to how Dean Corll was stopped by Henley on August 8th, 1973, via gunshots in self-defense. The reason for this is not what you expect. Henley had brought 2 other people with him on that day for Corll to abuse. The issue? Henley had brought a girl, Rhonda Williams, and the other person that was with him was Timothy Cordell Curley. This was the only time that Corll had been brought a female for a victim. This drove Corll mad but he would soon calm down and allow the teens to get high and drunk and fall asleep. Upon awakening, Hanley found himself bound with the other two teens, or they weren't bound together, but they all three individually were bound. Corll, now showing his true fury, let loose on all three teens, especially Rhonda. Now, he beat her like mercilessly. Like him and Hanley, like they both got abused, and Curly. I mean, this is disgusting to say, but he was saving the abuse for him later. You get me?
Like for bringing the girl in.
No. So, by the way, Brooks isn't here at all. Brooks is not in this current thing. But basically, he started beating Henley and Rhonda, and he left his victim untouched because he wanted to abuse them later. You get me?
Yeah.
So Rhonda and him he was planning to kill them then and there as soon as he was done like beating the shit out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Corona on all three teams, especially being pushed solely by the presence of a girl, he threatened to kill all three of them, having his way with Curly. But Henley appealed to him, saying that he would assault Rhonda if Corll let him loose. This to Corll made sense, so he did. So essentially, Henley was like, let me go and I'll take care of the girl. You don't have to look at her anymore. You don't have to touch her. You don't have to do any of this. It was a big mistake, as Henley was giving a knife to harm Rhonda, but Rhonda in this life or death situation got through Henley, saying, "Is this for real?" Henley coldly responded, "Yes," and Rhonda retorted, "Are you going to do anything about it?" This for some reason seems to have shocked Henley, in which he grabbed a .22. Corll kept pursuing his victims and threatened Corll to stop. I don't know why Rhonda specifically like begging for her life got to him. Maybe it was because it was like the first female victim for him as well, that for some reason for him this was crossing the line. Because it should be noted that both Brooks and Henley had participated in the abuse with Corll of these other victims. Corll, believing that Henley wouldn't do it, approached Henley menacingly, saying, "You won't do it." Henley shot him in the head, the shoulders, and the back. As well, the back was when Corll tried to run away, but he was shot in the back 3 times, where he dropped dead to the ground. So basically what happened is, I guess because Corll believed that he still had his like manipulative hold on Henley, that like he would do whatever he said. So obviously if he acted scary and all that, he wasn't expecting him to shoot him. But I'm pretty sure this was a shock to himself as well, because the way it seems that because this is what the police got from him confessing to them after the crime. The first shot, which was to the head, it obviously wasn't a kill shot, but it seemed to like come out of nowhere. I don't think he actually expected himself to shoot, because quickly after, he would shoot him 2 times in the shoulder, and then Henley would try getting away, which is when he turned his back and got shot 3 times in the back. After that final shot, he just dropped to the ground and died. Following this, the Pasadena police were called, where Henley would tell the police of Brooks and Corll's crimes. This would lead to the discovery of 28 bodies of victims hidden in different places. A boat shed that Corll rented, 17 bodies were found. Buried in the woodland near Lake Sam Rayburn, 4 bodies were found. 1 victim was buried on a beach in Jefferson County, and at least 6 victims were buried on a beach on Boulevard Peninsula. Also, only 27 bodies have been identified. and there are believed to be more than 28 victims, but the police stopped trying to find the bodies at the time because this was the highest spree in history at the time. But it would shortly be passed in the following years. I forget who passed them, but it was a case in California where the man got 29 kills, I believe, and it's I believe his last name was Hispanic, I believe, if I can remember. While Corll, what's up?
The guy that passed.
Yeah, that surpassed him. Yeah,
Okay.
he's also kind of, I've never heard of his name. I'm sure the case is big because it's a big kill count, but I was like, it was like this case where I hadn't heard of it until I actively searched for it. You get me?
Yeah.
While Corll had escaped the justice system, his accomplices Hanley and Brooks both did not, facing like I didn't write down the specific sentencing, but they both were basically in prison for life. I think both are dead now. I'm not too sure. I know one of them died of COVID in 2019 though.
One of the accomplices?
Yeah, I couldn't. This was on the Wikipedia and everything, and I didn't write down everything on the Wikipedia, but instead I wrote down everything on like the Murderpedia, is in which one like someone broke down everything that was going on with Corll and all that.
Yeah.
So I know what you're thinking, like, well, did the police do anything? Like, how were they actively searching for this guy and everything? And
they weren't.
Yeah, at all. Like I was saying, Houston Heights was in a bad area, and the police didn't care about the missing kids at the time. Also, throughout this entire time, no one suspected Corll of anything. To them, he was still the quiet, unassuming electrician who just did his job and kept his head down. And then, obviously, at his moment of death, he showed his true colors. Even it's probably really easy, really like you could see that, like it's if a person looked at this case, they would assume that this was the fault of like the broken home, because that seemed to be the only thing, like that was the only nurture thing that seemed to have gotten to him, and everything else seemed to have been nature, because he kept it hidden. And like, you know, looking from this case inside out, I feel like people would look at him taking care of Henley and Brooks as like, oh, they came from broken families. He obviously has a shred of humanity, but again, and at the moment of his death, he really showed who he was, and he really did not care about either of them. He was willing to kill them just because he brought a woman to him, like, or not a woman, technically a girl, because I'm pretty sure she was also underage. And yeah, that's the life of Dean Corll, and like his death and his killing spree. Any thoughts, Eris?
I mean, this is before the mainstream killers, I guess, right? You said
just slightly before the mainstream killers, which is why this case is quote unquote unknown. It's known, but it's not big. And you think someone named the Candyman killer would be pretty big? I mean, I know the movie has nothing to do with it, but
no, yeah, obviously.
Obviously, like when people search things up, like you think this would pop up. This doesn't pop up. The only reason I found this is actually because I searched up like serial killers in Texas.
Okay, so this is the one that appealed to you most?
Nah, it was appealed. It was more just like this. The other killers, I'm like, oh, I've heard of this. I'm pretty sure I've heard of this. This guy, I've never heard of a podcast. There's a YouTube video by a couple people. There's one with like 1 million views on it. Or was it a million? I'm pretty sure it was a million views, but that video was like super old, like 2018 or something. And I was just like, huh, I've never heard of this guy, and just kind of like read into it and everything.
Well, I mean, my thoughts is basically the same as all my other serial killer episodes, right?
Right.
Like, it's just incompetence of police. Like, nowadays, I don't think serial killers could actually exist.
Oh hell
Like
no,
I
dude!
guess
Like
nowhere ones, no.
yeah, you would immediately get again. You have everyone has a phone, which will allow you to get like caught in an instant. Your phone like something's always recording. There's CCTV everywhere and everything, which is I mean, it's good because it'll stop people like this. Um, and like yeah, I mentioned the police a little just because like I guess I didn't I feel like I didn't iterate this
Elaborate
enough.
much on it.
Yeah, literally no case file or anything was made on him.
You see,
It,
like
like
incompetence.
I literally have the New York Times um, article here, and it's straight up saying like they never even like really suspected it because
Mm.
they didn't care for the
So
kids
they never actually caught the dude, right? They like one
no
of the victims killed him.
no not well victim but also he's not innocent he
Accomplice.
yeah accomplice
I mean, kind of the victim because he did
he
get
is a victim
ministered.
because he was abused by no doubt he was abused mentally sexually probably
I
by
mean,
this guy.
it all just boils down on like to me it always boils like all the other killers I've looked into and this one too, the one you looked into, it all boils down to police incompetence and I guess this one kind of bad parents for letting their kids just
Well,
run wild.
not all of them were bad parents. Obviously, there was people there who wanted their children to be found, but I guess it's just maybe it was bad parenting, or maybe it was just bad timing on their end. And not all of these people were. I mean, there was some 18-year-olds. The oldest was 20 years old, I believe, which was like
18-year-old. I mean, parent. I mean, people could still declare them missing, and people could go
oh
out looking.
they did. As far as like police incompetence, like you were saying, it was police incompetence, but I would say in the system itself just like did not help. So here's a quote. A police officer can't obtain a warrant of arrest nor can he force entry to a location if he is denied admittance when investigating a missing persons report, the chief said. So basically this is the main reason they never went to actually try and actively find these kids is because the way they saw it is it would be fruitless since they wouldn't be able to like actually investigate.
So they didn't even try. Still,
Yeah.
like they.
I mean, it's still incompetence, but it's incompetence backed by a broken system.
But I mean, still they didn't try. Like they
Yeah,
didn't go out to actually
I'm not
see.
disagreeing with you. Yeah, it is their fault. They could have done something.
I mean, a lot of these things could be avoided if it wasn't for just incompetent people. I feel like there's also a good amount of blame on the police on that part.
Oh yeah. I mean, then again, didn't really elaborate on it, but not much to elaborate on when they didn't even fucking have a case. In their own eyes, they didn't have a case. And
Me, there's a fucking case right there. Fucking Pete, like what? 27 people? You said 27, 28?
28, 27 identified, and believed to be more. There was actually something I was reading about how Henley might have actually killed one himself because the killing didn't the death the body the way the body was found um like it seemed that it didn't fit the MO of Corll, so they believe that Henley might have killed one, but that was just a theory. Obviously in the end they were all just like accomplices to everything, so they still got their crime and everything.
So this isn't just like the Candyman kill. This is like a group, right?
Yeah, this was literally like a sex trafficking ring here
So I mean,
by definition because they
from
were
from from what I understand, it's kind of like this like Saw, like the group of people. But instead of having people learn lessons and shit,
yeah
it's just doing it for fun.
yeah. If you want to see it like that, I've never seen any single Saw movie.
Oh, it's just like the
Well, I know
first
it's a group of people. I know that much. The first dude is the old man, but he gets his wife in and his nurse and like a
nah,
lawyer or some shit.
kind of. Towards
But
the end, it's like two accomplices and then just him.
um, really quickly,
What were you talking
as far as I saw for the confession, Brooks denied it. So this is what happened. Henley confessed to everything the moment they found everything, which was almost immediately because they went in, they saw the fucking torture board, which is the way that board I described with you with like rope on it and everything.
Yeah.
He had multiple sexual toys. He had the gun. He was naked. They found him naked on the ground when he was killed.
Mm-hmm.
So Henley basically confessed to everything, but he did not confess completely to the truth, because the way the articles I read described it, they found out how bad everything was by the way the bodies were found. Some bodies still had gags in them, like in their mouth and everything, and they like tried hiding certain, like they were wrapped in plastic and shit. That like they were wrapped in plastic, and some were still like in their handcuffs and everything.
I mean,
and again, like I was saying earlier, Brooks denied it on day one, and on the second day when I don't know what they told him. I did have the option to read the confessionals, but I was just kind of like, I don't know, man. I'm not gonna get in. I was thinking like, I'm not gonna get in depth on how these people were murdered, because it was truly fucking disgusting, and I don't want to dishonor the memory of the victims. But so I was like, there's no point in reading how he did things, but he did deny it all on day one, and I guess they confronted with him on day two all the evidence, and he eventually just broke and confessed to everything.
So they just walked into his place, or what?
No, they brought him in. I mean, they had the evidence to bring him in. Plus, he's a kid from a broken home. I doubt like he's gonna get much chance to like run away from these police officers. He's probably too afraid to run away as well.
Yeah.
Oh, and so this ring, there were more kids that helped. That helped Corll. It's known that there was more people. There was a couple friends of Brooks and Henley that helped with like 1 or 2 killings, and then they dipped.
They never found them, right? Or they never.
I'm sure they were tried and everything, but they might have done some plea deals or something. From everything I read, it really focused on Brooks and Henley because they were the main 2 accomplices, and these other kids were just kind of mentioned and name dropped, and were like, they helped on this murder, and they mainly helped only by moving bodies for money.
But it was moved bodies mostly.
Basically, they just moved bodies for Corll. And I don't know if these kids even knew Corll. It might have just been Brooks and Henley bringing bodies to them and being like, "Hey, help me move this, and I'll give you like $50."
I mean, so you can kind of blame them for not telling anyone.
Yeah, you could absolutely, but at the same time, they probably didn't know the murdered kids, and like why would the police believe them and shit like that? Plus, these were all like runaways and shit, or not quote unquote runaways, and bad families, bad homes. So I'm assuming to them, why would they care? But even then, that's still like a really fucking awful way to think of things and all that.
So I mean, still bad parents, not
bad
making
parents. Yeah. All in all, it seems like that was just a bad time to live in, dude.
I don't think it was all bad. I think it's just.
I mean, this was the beginning of a massive amount of murder sprees in America.
Well, I mean, if someone sees someone get like attention for killing people, and this dude over here is already like thinking like, maybe I should kill someone, maybe they'll.
Well, this guy didn't want attention.
I mean, even so, like they saw like another killer saw him getting this attention, right? Even though this guy didn't want it.
Yeah, Corll didn't want the attention. I get. So you're saying he might inspire someone?
Yeah.
Possibly. I don't know. You got to be pretty fucking demented see this guy as a fucking someone who you aspire to be. I don't know who
Well,
would.
it's not aspiring to be him. It's just seeing how he's getting attention
Oh, you mean?
that
Oh,
you
okay, I get
wanted
what you're saying.
to, just like even like that too. You know,
Yeah, I
like
understand.
I guess how some companies say shit like, uh, bad press is still good press or
Yeah,
whatever.
all press is good press.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's something like that. You know.
yeah, I understand. Right, so I mean, my final thoughts are, I mean, this guy was a fucking disgusting piece of trash. I fucking wish he went to prison instead of getting shot in the head so he could fucking suffer the justice system, because that's the one fucking that's the one good thing that, I guess, that's one of the good things that only ever happened to him, is that he got a fucking quick and painless death, dude.
Quick and painless.
Well, it wasn't okay, yeah, it was
I
probably
would
painful,
not
but it
want.
was a quick one. So
I would not want anyone a lot like these like serial killers to get a quick and painless death. I want them to suffer. Like
but
they made
that's what I'm
other people.
saying. If he was in the justice system, this motherfucker would have suffered. This guy was a fucking child molester. And he
Exactly, he
killed
should
him.
have
In
suffered.
the prison system, he would have been fucking destroyed, dude. And I would have been
Yeah,
happy to
that's
hear
good.
about it. Yeah,
That
that's
is
what I'm
good.
saying. That's what I'm saying. It's good. That's what I wished happened. But instead, he was shot to fucking death right there in his own apartment. You get me?
Yeah,
He got away from. He paid for the crime, but he didn't pay the full price. In my
a discount.
opinion. What happened?
He got a discount.
Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, my bad. He got a Costco discount on his fucking. And
Murder. I mean, they all. I mean, people are fucked. Humanity. Some people are trash. Not every single person is like this. I would hope not. You know.
well, that being said, I feel like this is a good time to leave off, and this has been the Horror Highway. Later.